Hey everybody, this is James at TeaDB, and I am joined by a very special guest today.
I'm Glen Crimson Lotus Tea.
Yeah, so you guys probably recognize Glenn here for what's been about maybe your annual appearance on the show.
Something like that.
So,
once or twice a year since like episode 8 or 9 or something.
Something like that. I think.
Kind of fun.
I think Glenn and Lamu were our very first guests, or at least one of them, right when we were getting started. And you guys actually got started probably right around the time.
I'll admit it's a little embarrassing going back and watching some of those videos. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I rewatched one where I brewed like young 7542, like 1 gram per like 5 milliliters or something. I'm like, whoa, is that?
This is a strong tea.
Yeah,
that's what we're gonna try today. This is it's a custom blend that we've not pressed. Didn't have time to press it last year, but it's gonna be one of the first things that we press and get sold this year. It's called Jade Rabbit, and it's fun. It's a fun blend.
And so for this tea, so this is a new blend that you guys have yet to release, and it's so is this the 2017 material and next year?
This is multi-year. So
okay.
It's got a bunch of different stuff. So it will be. If it's a multi-year thing, I generally label it in the year that it was pressed. So I'll call this a 2018 tea, but it's got material from different years in it.
And will you be so? The material that you've already collected, will that be in the blend, or?
I already have all the material for
it.
We just didn't have a chance to press it last year. We just kind of run out of time. And this was I was very specific that this get blended in a very specific way, and generally when people are doing blends in Yunnan, they'll take all the material that needs to be in the blend and they'll put it on a giant factory floor, and they'll just turn it with pitchforks, and they call that the blend. That works fine, I think, for some blends, but generally, like what actually ends up getting in each individual cake, it's hard to know that what is actually in each individual cake, and then even in what's in an individual cup is exactly what you had intended to be blended. So for this one here, I've been working with a factory that will let us blend on a per cake basis. So that means that the person who's actually doing the pressing is going to sit there with all the material, and they'll be able to measure it out. And so I'll actually know exactly, like each cake is exactly the correct ratio that I had intended. And so they'll blend all the materials right there on a per gram basis, blend it up, mix it up, hand it to the presser, and stamp it. It takes more time, and it's a little bit more expensive to do it that way, but I really think that for something that's specially blended, you could have that attention. The only problem is I can't really trust that somebody will do that the right way unless I'm there.
Right.
And so it's something that I actually have to be there and watch and to make sure it gets done.
Yeah. So is there a reason why for this specific tea you would make that request and other teas you wouldn't, or is this something you do for most all of your
primarily because all the other teas that we've blended were all ones that Lamu and I blended ourselves.
Okay.
And the blends weren't complicated enough that we could do it ourselves, and we did it in small batches, like 2 kilos at a time. You know, so if it was a 50-50 blend, you put 1 kilo of one, and we sit there and work it and blend it. But even still, there's just that much doubt that like what is actually in that cake. You know, because even as good as you blend it, you don't really know that, you know, this may be 75% of one and 25% of another. And if you really wanted it to be 50-50, what's actually in that cake? And that's just something that's been bothering me for a while. And I really wanted to at least be able to tell the customer that, like, this cake, for the story of that cake, as you drink through it, will be the blend that I intended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So do you drink as much young shunk Pu'erh these days? I know you've got some nice tastes for some middle-aged stuff.
Yeah, I do not drink as much young Pu'erh as I did a while ago. So usually when I'm drinking some of these teas, it takes me a little bit to just kind of get in the mode.
Get into the mode of the young shung mode. Well, the nice thing about this is there is some aged material in here.
Yeah.
So I specifically kind of wanted that. And this is an interesting tea. It's hard to spend like one session with it, or it's hard to spend a short session with it because this tea, the first 5 steeps will taste like one thing. The next 5 steeps will taste like something else. 10 to 15 will taste like something else, and it's really nice to kind of. This is a tea that you can drink and experience for throughout a long session.
Yeah, and we so for those of you that probably don't know this location, we're drinking at Phoenix Tea, and Glenn and Lamu will often set up shop here on Fridays, and so you'll usually use the same gaiwan or similar gaiwan?
I bring my gaiwan, I bring my tea tasting setups, and so we're here every Friday afternoons, noon to 6. It's nice. This has kind of become like a local tea drinking spot. James comes by every other week and brings some interesting old stuff from his storage, and I bring some interesting stuff from my storage. We've partnered with Phoenix Tea, so we actually have all of our product here, which is really nice when we're not in Yunnan. I mean, when we are in Yunnan, when we are in China, people can still come here and have a retail experience with our products, and that works out really nice. But it does mean that we are in an active shop, so people may actually be coming in and walking through. And I think there's construction going on upstairs, so
we are very much in a live set here. Yeah, and this is you will usually use something like 10 grams for 150 milliliters.
That's my go-to. And the nice thing about 10 grams when you're developing a blend is it's really, really easy to do ratio math, right? So like 20% would be 2 grams of one material. So
okay,
it makes it easy. It makes it easier for me. So even though 10 grams or in 150 ml gaiwan is maybe a little bit much for an individual drinking session for one person, like when I'm blending. But it just makes the ratio math a little bit easier.
And so when you're constructing these blends, how do you approach it? Do you sort of have like a concept of like what you're trying to achieve, and you're like, or is it kind of like you have all these different material and you're just trying to like integrate them together in a way that sort of works?
It's a little bit of both. I generally have a rough idea of what I want a blend to be like, but step one is taking all of the source material and understanding it intimately. I mean, you have to know exactly what each tea can do, and I take really good notes. I brew a lot of the teas again and again and again over multiple days. I create like a list of positives and negatives, basically on a scale of 0 to 10. Like, what's the aroma like on this tea? What's the flavor like? What's the aftertaste like? What's the energy like? And once I kind of have a good baseline of what this tea is and what each of the teas are, then I can start to see, like trends. Well, this tea's, like really good in this area, but this tea's not good in this area. And so trying to find like something that can balance it out. And then just experimenting. And sometimes it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, I mean, it doesn't matter what I really hope for with that blend, but if like those pieces together just turn into something bad, then it just doesn't work.
So it sounds like you'll usually collect a lot of the malcha and the material from the farmers, and you'll sort of you'll use that. You won't be like, oh, I need to get something else while you're sort of in like the middle.
Sometimes, sometimes if I'm working on a blend and I'm like, you know what, this really needs something that's like much more fruity and much more flowery, then I can actually specifically look for something like that, like when we're actually out sourcing material. But in general, like I try to source as much amazing material as we can, and if something's super awesome by itself, I'll sell it as a single origin tea. But if something like just it's really good in one area but not in another, then I'll try and like work it into a blend. And I enjoy the blending because the blending gives me a chance to do some creativity. Because I'm not actually out there picking the leaves myself. So I have sometimes, and I'm not actually out there processing every tea in a wok myself. I've done some of that, but I can't do that for all of it. And so this is a way for me to kind of add a little bit of my creative input into the products that we have. So it has a lot of energy for me, and there's a lot going on in the mouth. And those are some things that I had kind of hoped that this tea would do.
Right, and one of the first things I noticed about this tea, and I'm not sure if it's just because I don't drink a lot of Yangsheng, was just the strength of it. It's pretty pungent, just mouthfeel that lasts in the mouth, and like it starts out more as, I don't know, what you'd think of as just kind of a basic bitterness, and eventually it sort of transforms to sort of sweeter feelings around the mouth.
Yeah, we had hoped to do that. That's intended. I want this tea to be a little bit more like front forward and be a little bit more aggressive, but with rewards of sweetness and aftertaste.
And so, sort of keeping in mind that probably, I suspect that, like a lot of Western-based, they will want to drink this tea probably pretty quickly, I imagine.
Yeah.
But also probably a good selection of people will want to drink it later on or age it. How do you sort of balance those two groups?
No, it's a good question. I have noticed I've experimented a little bit with some personal cakes and things that I've done where I've mixed some older material in with some younger material, and it's kind of nice. It does some interesting things. The older material gives the tea an initial maturity, like a depth, but at the same time, sometimes the older material, since it's already aged a little bit, helps the younger material age a little bit faster. So I think this thing will be interesting to drink now and also interesting for some aging.
And where would you say this tea sort of fits in just with the teas that you've already pressed? I know that you have some regular go-tos, like you pressed, I think, like stuff like the Hidden Song and the one from Kunlu, things like that have become sort of like yearly pressings for you guys. Do you see this tea as sort of like more of a long-term project, more of a... I don't know.
Some of the material that I have in this we won't be able to get again. So this will be a tea that when I make it and blend it, that's it. That's all we've got. So
this will not be a repeat production.
Yeah, no, this won't be a repeat production. And I maybe only have enough final material to maybe just do like 50 kilos of it or something like that, which is really not that much. So maybe just a couple hundred cakes. So. Yeah, so that's an interesting problem to have. Sometimes you get really amazing materials, and sometimes the materials are older, and you come up with like a really amazing blend, but then you won't ever be able to do that again. I've been wanting to do the Emerald Sea blend again. I think I can get access to that material again this year, but I wasn't able to last year, and that one I think has actually turned out really well. It's the same for Hidden Song. The quality of material from that farmer for that material. The last couple of years just hasn't been there, and so it's we just can't do it, because the tea just doesn't fit what we're hoping to do with it.
Mm. Yeah, this strikes me as, and coming from someone that doesn't drink Yangsheng every day, it strikes me as fairly strong, and probably one that I would think is on the stronger end of the blends and the teas that you've made.
Yeah, for sure.
Slumbering Dragon definitely is really, really powerful in a lot of ways, too. This tea, I think, is pretty different from that one. And I don't know. I mean, looking at the leaves, it looks like it's kind of a mixed material, as you'd expect from a blend.
I'll hand you the Guy one as soon as I pour this out. A lot of our and I like delicate teas. I like simple teas. I like fruity and floral and soft teas. But sometimes I really want something that's got a little bit more of an aggression to it, and being able to provide both gives customers an opportunity to choose what they want to have.
Yeah, and you had mentioned before, I think it was off camera, that this tea tends to brew for quite a while.
This tea will go a long time. There's a lot going on in this tea.
The aroma is still very pungent. Let's see, and yeah, it's a mix of sort of darker, more olive green leaves and some lighter.
Yeah, you can see some of the aged
greens.
and some of the leaves there.
And how far back does this blend go, like in terms of years?
Mid-2000s, some of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the material is quite aged.
Yeah, so and it's interesting anytime we find older, loose materials and things like that.
Yeah.
Sure, go for it.
I guess we should probably wrap up this episode. So
Okay, sure. However you want to do that, go for it.
Okay, sure. And so this tea, you'll be going to Yunnan, and then you'll be doing that sort of special blending process. And so when can people look forward to this tea?
If everything goes well, maybe early May. So hopefully as soon as we get there in April, we've already got a time set at the factory. We've already reserved it ahead of time to go in, get it all pressed. We'll watch the pressing process, make sure everything's pressed and blended the way we want it. And then I've already got the design work done, so I just need to get it printed and wrapped. And so hopefully we'll be able to get this out really quickly, and then wait for the rest of our teas to come in after that.
That's great. Yeah, I think it crosses me as a good, strong blend for people that are looking more in the long term, and for those that like their tea on the pungent, but still kind of a rewarding aftertaste. And I think it's pretty good.
Awesome. I'm glad you had a chance to try it.
Yeah, and we'll be back with Glenn next week for another episode where we talk more about some general questions with processing and ripe pu'erh and whatnot.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.